Are you making a few $1,000s a month, yet your work feels like there's almost no purpose, and you're starting to make less and less money every month, causing you to furtherly cycle into a loop of being burnt out, unmotivated, and not wanting to continue to work? Well, I've closed a few $100,000 for myself and businesses that I've partnered with because I partner with online service-based business owners to help them sign more clients and make these clients worth more. So I want to share with you the techniques I've learned during my work and after moving out on my own to Arizona, where I'm currently at, so that way you don't constantly feel burnt out while you're making just a few grand a month, making it easy and effortless to scale to $10, $15, $20,000 a month without feeling like you have to buy into some guru's unprofitable, complicated sales systems. So the reason why this has been happening is because when your business grows, you also grow as your behavior changes when you're given different conditions. We don't ever stay the same. Everything's always changing and there's always chaos, especially as our business grows, and that requires adaptation from us. And if you're already sleeping 8 to 10 hours a night, maybe even 6, right? Even 6 hours a night, as long as you're sleeping decently quality and you also have some form of exercise to be able to take a step back from work and have strong physical health, the problem isn't necessarily your performance, but it's the mental frame you put around work. If you're not showing up like you really want to in your business, not showing up with confidence, calmness, and presence, then what you have to be able to do is identify what things inside of your mind are holding you back from showing up in the right way for your business so that way you can grow. And how you identify what these things are is simply by looking at who do I need to be? And then the way you figure that out is by asking yourself, what type of person and what behaviors would they have that would achieve the goals that I want? And let's be honest, we all want to make more money. I know you don't want to just stay at a couple $1,000s a month. So you need to figure out what that is, and more importantly, the discrepancy between who you are and that person. And then list out the different behaviors and mental frameworks that that person uses that you don't. So to give you an example, maybe when they go to sit down and they feel a sense of nervousness, they just didn't close a sales call or something like that, they immediately get into a positive reframe of there's something I can learn from this and there's a way that I can continue to grow. But maybe right now you've almost reverted back to immediately feeling negative, using negative self-talk and language to yourself, and then that created an emotional loop, creating maybe you're sitting down at your desk but you're not actually working as efficiently as you could have. And those small things, even if you work for like 8, 10 hours a day, are what really make your work inefficient. And I can tell you from personal experience over the last few weeks, what's happened after I moved all the way out to Arizona is that I started to revert back to old behaviors when there was emotional blockages or walls in my business due to maybe a sales call not closing or a problem in the business because of the chaos of figuring out everything else, like ordering groceries, making meal plans and doing those sorts of things, which yes, I did all of that before, but it's just in a different environment. And the reason why that's important to note is because as you scale your business, you might have done similar things like make content, reach out to people in DMs, deliver to your clients, but there's a new environment where it feels like there's higher pressure. So maybe your clients are paying you more. Maybe you made a little bit more money. Maybe you made 5 or 7K last month instead of the usual 500 6 to 12 months ago you made before, which is fine. But then as you grew your business, you also wanted to grow. The problem with that is that you didn't associate this business growth with your personal growth, And therefore, when there was this stress, you just reverted back to your old identity of whatever negative behaviors this might be. So you're going to continue to constantly hit this block of a certain income plateau or level until you can figure out what are the things and frameworks that you put yourself in that actually stop you from going beyond. And how you figure that out is through personal reflection. What I recommend doing is open up a ChatGPT window and giving it as much context to your situation once per week for an hour or two, and then tell it to give you the most pressing questions that you need to have asked to you, that you need to answer, so that way you can really grow and learn and uncover these hidden narratives that you might have in your mind. And then answer those questions into that chat, analyze where you can improve on, and then take the next step to make an improvement. How you make that improvement is by changing what you do or how you do it. So either you change what you do in your business, or you change how you do it through the values that you do it with. Because what you value is just simply something that you use to solve a problem or pain in your life. Meaning that you can value high communication, because when you don't have a high level of communication, I know this for myself, there's this insecurity or lack of trust from the past, years before. So if you don't keep a constant standard of high communication for yourself, that's not going to be reciprocated between your clients or between anybody else that you might work with in your business. This goes for the same across the board. So you need to list out these things, and then now that you have the values that you need to act upon and live by inside of your business, you also have the behaviors, so the way to think, the words to say, and then the decisions and actions to make that you need to do to be the type of person who can really grow inside of your business. All you have to do is every single time there's something that isn't directly related to you just doing the work you need to do to book more sales calls and close more deals, revert back to a value that you know that you should be holding by, and then that's when you can make the decision. So for example, if you go to sit down and you need to improve a system, or maybe you come up and you're like, I don't really know what else to do during my day. I felt like I already did all of this. Well, ask yourself, what are one of my values? Maybe one of your values is persistence. Well, what can I persist through? Or maybe it's critical thinking, right? Because all of these values are something that you had lacked in the past, in your childhood, or even in the last few years, that you need the inverse of to be able to really grow. And then once you figure out exactly what thing you're going to think of, maybe it's persistence or critical thinking, well, the way to critically think is through really analyzing your situation. Well, how do you make more money? It's through getting on more sales calls with people and probably delivering a better service or getting more leads. Identify which one of these things is the biggest constraint for your business right now, and then work on tasks that either make this easier to do, or just doing more of this itself, or making these things better. And then as you do that, over time, your identity conflates a bunch of action to your subconscious, and then over time, you start to identify with these actions and with these new values. So if you constantly reflect and always get a great picture of what these things are, you can stay in tune with yourself while still growing your business, because you're not burnt out, you're not unmotivated, you're ready to get to work, because that's just a part of who you are. However, if there creates at any point a disconnect between who you feel like you are and the business you run, you're going to slowly but surely get disconnected from the work and therefore not succeed, or at least not give yourself the best ability to build a calendar and structure that facilitates you actually being able to achieve your full potential. If you want more help understanding these concepts, click the top link in the description, and I have a free private community that you can apply to join, where I'll teach you exactly how to implement this advice so that way you can simplify your business, not feel like scaling is complicated, meaning you can start actually making more progress and get to those 10, 15, and 20K months that you really want.